never thought I would still be working nights at 28 years old, but here I am, pulling the graveyard shift at a 5-story parking garage just outside the city. The pay is decent, 15% more than day shift, and honestly, I have never been much of a morning person anyway. The job seemed perfect for me. Clock in at 11 at night, clock out at 7 in the morning, and spend most of that time in a quiet concrete structure with hardly anyone around. The parking garage sits next to a cluster of office buildings in the suburbs. 5 levels, around 300 parking spaces total. During the day, the place is packed with commuters, but at night it is a different world. Maybe 20 or 30 cars stay overnight, belonging to office workers who carpool or take the bus home. My job is simple. Sit in the booth on the first floor, check tickets when people leave, and do a couple of walking patrols each shift to make sure everything is secure. The booth is small, just a glass box with a computer, a chair, and a space heater for cold nights. There are cameras on every level in the stairwells and at the entrance and exit. I can see everything from my monitor. Most nights I watch Netflix on my phone, read a book, or sip coffee to stay awake. It is boring, but I like boring. Boring means safe. My best friend Jake used to joke about it. "Man, you are basically asking to be in a horror movie," he would say. "Alone in a dark parking garage all night. That is how every scary story starts." I would laugh it off. The place felt safe. The gate closes automatically at 11, and after that, cars can only enter if they pull a ticket or scan a pass card. I had control over who came in and out. Nothing ever happened. That all changed one Tuesday night in early November. It was around 11:45 and I was scrolling through my phone when I heard the low rumble of an engine. I looked up and saw a car pulling up to the entrance barrier. It was an older gray sedan, nothing fancy, with a dent in the front bumper. The driver was a woman, maybe 50 years old, with long messy hair and no makeup. She pressed the button to get a ticket, but she did not take it. She just sat there, staring straight ahead toward my booth. I waited about 30 seconds, thinking maybe she was looking for something in her car or distracted. The barrier did not lift because she had not pulled the ticket all the way out. I pressed the manual override button on my console to raise it for her. The car rolled forward, but it moved slowly, way slower than normal. When she passed my booth, she turned her head and stared right at me. Not a glance, a full-on stare. She did not blink. Something about it made my skin crawl. I watched her car climb the ramp to the second level and disappear. I went back to my phone, but something kept nagging at me. That look she gave me felt wrong. Not angry, not confused, just empty. I shook it off. People zone out sometimes. Maybe she had a long day. I tried to forget about it. 15 minutes later, I heard the sound of a car coming back down the ramp. I looked up and saw the same gray sedan rolling slowly toward the exit barrier. I figured she was leaving. Maybe she forgot something or changed her mind. But she did not pull up to the payment machine. She just stopped in front of the barrier and sat there, engine idling, staring at my booth again. I waited a full minute. She did not move. She did not roll down her window. She did not do anything. Finally, I stepped out of the booth and walked toward her car. "Ma'am, you need your ticket to exit," I said, keeping my voice friendly. She did not respond. She just kept staring straight ahead, hands on the wheel. "Ma'am," I said again, a little louder. Still nothing. Then, without warning, she put the car in reverse and backed up. My heart jumped. She turned the wheel and drove back up the ramp to the second level. I stood there, frozen, completely confused. What the hell just happened? I walked back to the booth and sat down, my pulse racing. That was not normal. That was not someone who forgot their wallet or got lost. That was something else. I pulled up the camera feed for the second level on my monitor. I saw her car moving slowly through the lanes, but she was not pulling into any parking space. She was just driving in circles, slow and steady, like she was looking for something. After about 5 minutes, her car disappeared from the second level camera. I switched to the third level feed and saw her driving up the ramp. I felt my chest tighten. Why is she doing this? I checked the fourth level camera. Her car appeared, still moving at that same creepy slow pace. Then she went up to the fifth level, the rooftop level that is open to the sky. I watched her drive onto the empty rooftop and expected her to park, but she did not. She just kept circling. I decided to check the entry log on the computer. Every time someone pulls a ticket, it gets recorded with a timestamp. I scrolled to 11:45, the time she arrived. There was nothing. The last ticket printed was at 9:30 that evening. I checked again, thinking maybe I missed it. Still nothing. The system had no record of her entering the garage. But I saw her press the button. I opened the barrier for her, I saw the whole thing. My hands started to shake. Maybe the system glitched, I thought. Technology is not perfect. But then I remembered something else. I pulled up the recorded footage from the entrance camera and scrubbed back to 11:45. I watched her car pull up. I watched her arm reach out the window toward the ticket machine. But no ticket came out. The machine did not print anything. And I had pressed the manual override to let her in. Did I imagine her taking a ticket? I felt a cold wave of panic wash over me. I switched back to the live camera feeds and checked every level. Second level, no gray sedan. Third level, no gray sedan. Fourth level, nothing. Fifth level, the rooftop, completely empty. The car was gone. My heart pounded in my chest. Where did she go? Then I heard it, the faint echo of an engine from somewhere above me. I got up and walked out of the booth, looking up toward the higher levels. I saw a glow of headlights moving slowly on the fourth level. She was still here. I grabbed my flashlight and my walkie-talkie, even though there was no one else on the other end. I was alone. I decided to do my patrol early. I needed to see what was going on. I took the stairwell up to the second level. It was silent except for the hum of the overhead lights. I walked through the rows of parked cars. Everything looked normal. I went up to the third level. Same thing. Just a few cars parked neatly in their spots. Then I climbed to the fourth level and my stomach dropped. There in the far corner I saw the gray sedan. It was parked at an angle, taking up 2 spaces. The headlights were off. But I could see someone sitting in the driver's seat. The silhouette of the woman perfectly still. I took a breath and walked toward the car. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I called out. No response. I got closer, shining my flashlight toward the windshield. "Ma'am," I said again. She did not move. She was just sitting there, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead like a statue. I walked up to the driver's side window and knocked on the glass. "Ma'am, I need you to respond." Still nothing. Then suddenly the engine roared to life. I jumped back. The car lurched into reverse and came straight at me. I stumbled backward and barely got out of the way as she sped past me and up the ramp to the fifth level. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might pass out. I ran back to the booth, my legs shaking. I grabbed my phone and called my supervisor. It rang and rang. No answer. I called again, still nothing. It was 1:30 in the morning. He was probably asleep. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? There is a woman driving around the parking garage. That did not sound like an emergency. I decided to wait and keep watching the cameras. I sat in the booth with my eyes glued to the monitor. On the fifth level camera, I saw her car parked in the middle of the open rooftop. 10 minutes passed. The car did not move. Then the driver's side door opened. The woman stepped out. She walked slowly to the edge of the rooftop where there is a waist-high concrete barrier. She stood there, looking down over the edge. My blood ran cold. Oh God, is she going to jump? I stood up, ready to run up there, but then she stopped. She did not jump. She just stood there for 5 minutes, staring down at the ground below. Then she walked back to her car and opened the trunk. She pulled out a large black duffel bag and set it on the ground. She unzipped it and bent down, rummaging through it. From the angle of the camera, I could not see inside the bag clearly, but then she pulled something out. It was long, maybe 3 feet, and metallic. It looked like a crowbar or a metal rod. She held it in her hand and stood there, completely still. My stomach twisted into knots. Is that a weapon? That was it. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. 911, what is your emergency? The dispatcher asked. There is a woman in the parking garage acting really strange, I said, my voice cracking. She has what looks like a weapon. I gave the address and described the situation as best I could. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way about 5 minutes out. She told me to stay on the line. I kept my eyes on the camera. The woman was moving now. She walked toward the ramp, still holding the metal rod, and started heading down, from the 5th level to the 4th. My heart felt like it was going to explode. She was coming down. She was getting closer to me. I checked the time, 3 minutes until the police arrived. I switched to the 3rd level camera and saw her walking down the ramps, not using the elevator, just walking. She was on foot now, carrying that rod. I switched to the 2nd level. There she was, still walking. Slow, steady steps heading toward the 1st level, toward me. I locked the door to the booth from the inside. It was just a flimsy lock on a glass door, but it was something. I sat in my chair, phone pressed to my ear, my other hand hovering over the screen ready to call again if I needed to. I looked at the 1st level camera feed. The stairwell door opened, and she stepped out onto the 1st level. She stopped and turned her head. She was looking right at my booth. We were about 50 feet apart. Then she started walking toward me. I could barely breathe. She took slow, deliberate steps, getting closer and closer. She was 20 feet away when I saw the flashing red and blue lights outside the entrance. 2 police cars pulled in fast, tires screeching. The woman stopped. She turned toward the police cars. 4 officers jumped out, guns drawn. "Drop the weapon, hands up," one of them shouted. She let the metal rod fall to the ground. It hit the concrete with a loud clang. She raised her hands slowly. The officers moved in, handcuffed her, and pulled her away from the booth. One of the officers walked over and knocked on the booth door. "You can come out, sir. You are safe." I unlocked the door and stepped out, my legs barely holding me up. The officer asked me what happened, and I told him everything. She came in at 11:45, drove around for hours, would not leave, kept appearing on different levels. He nodded and took notes. Another officer came over holding the metal rod in an evidence bag. It was a solid steel bar about 3 feet long. They searched her car on the 5th level and found more items: a knife, rope, and duct tape. The officer looked at me seriously. "She has been reported missing by her family 3 days ago. Mental health crisis. We have been looking for her." He explained that she had a history of mental illness and had stopped taking her medication. They did not know what she was planning to do, but it was clear she was dangerous. He thanked me for calling and said I did the right thing. They put her in the back of one of the cars and drove away. I was alone again in the parking garage. I sat back down in the booth, still shaking. I could not stop replaying everything in my head. The way she stared at me. The way she circled the levels over and over. The way she walked toward me with that metal rod. I stayed in that booth until 7 in the morning, barely moving, watching every camera feed like a hawk. When my shift ended, I went home, but I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that blank, empty stare. I still work the night shift. I still sit in that booth. But now, every time a car pulls up late at night, my heart skips a beat. I keep the police non-emergency number on speed dial. You never know what is going to roll through those gates after midnight. That was the scariest night of my life, and I will never forget it. I started working the night shift at St. Mary's Hospital when I was 23 years old. At first, I told myself it was temporary, just until I saved enough to go back to school. But then the paychecks kept coming, the rent kept getting paid, and suddenly 3 years had gone by. If you've ever worked nights, you know how it completely warps your life. Your friends stop inviting you to things because you're always asleep when they're free. I missed my little sister's birthday party last year. Missed Thanksgiving dinner with my family. Even just grabbing coffee on a Saturday afternoon feels impossible because my body doesn't know which way is up anymore. My mom used to tell me, "Night shift turns you into a shadow, Sarah. You'll fade away if you're not careful." I used to laugh it off. But now when I catch my reflection in the hospital hallway mirrors at 2 in the morning, pale skin under those harsh fluorescent lights, I think maybe she wasn't completely wrong. Everything changed at the end of September. The hospital itself is a 4-story building on the east side of town. At night, it feels like a completely different place. The hallways stretch on forever, all polished linoleum that squeaks under your shoes. There's this smell that never goes away, that mix of disinfectant and something sick underneath it that clings to your scrubs no matter how many times you wash them. You hear machines beeping constantly, ventilators breathing for patients, the rattle of medication carts being pushed from room to room. The break room is on the second floor, cramped and ugly, with vending machines that seem designed to steal your money. One of them took $3 from me last week and gave me nothing. The coffee machine is even worse. It spits out something brown that tastes like warm dishwater, but we all drink it anyway because what choice do we have at 3 in the morning? My coworkers are decent enough. There's Marcus, the security guard who falls asleep at his desk every single night around 4. Linda, the charge nurse who's permanently annoyed at everyone and everything. And Deshaun, the other janitor on my shift, who walks around with his earbuds and listening to old-school hip-hop and barely talks to anyone. I'd settled into a routine. Clock in at 10 at night, clock out at 6 in the morning. Clean the hallways on the second and third floors, empty trash from patient rooms, mop up whatever needs mopping. Same thing every night for 3 years. Then, the first week of September, she showed up. The first time I saw her, I knew something was off. She was maybe 30 years old, blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, wearing brand new navy blue scrubs that looked like they'd never been washed. Her shoes were these bright white sneakers, completely spotless. Nobody who actually works in a hospital has shoes that clean. She spent the first night following the supervisor around, nodding at everything, writing notes on a clipboard. I figured she was a new volunteer or maybe a nurse transferring from another unit. But she didn't talk to anyone, she just watched. The second night, same thing. Quiet, observing, taking notes. By the third night, I started noticing her more. I was mopping the floor on the third floor around midnight when she appeared at the end of the hallway. "You always work third floor?" she asked. Her voice was soft but had this weird flat quality to it, like she was reading from a script. "Usually," I said, wringing out my mop. "Rotates sometimes depending on what needs cleaning." She nodded slowly, that strange smile on her face. "Makes sense, quieter up here." Then she just walked away. The next night I was in the break room around 1 in the morning eating my usual snack. She walked in and sat directly across from me even though there were 4 other empty tables. "You drive the blue Honda in the employee lot?" she asked. I looked up surprised. "Yeah, why?" "Just noticed it." "Nice car." Then she stood up and left without another word. That's when the uncomfortable feeling started creeping in. The following night, I decided to take my break earlier, around 12:30 instead of 1. I thought maybe I could avoid running into her. I grabbed my usual snack from the vending machine, Cheetos and a Diet Coke, and sat down. 5 minutes later, she walked in. She went straight to the vending machine and bought the exact same thing, Cheetos and Diet Coke. She sat 3 tables away, eating slowly, watching me. I tried to ignore it, told myself it was just a coincidence. But over the next few days, it got worse. Everywhere I went, she appeared 5 to 10 minutes later. If I was restocking supplies in the closet on the second floor, she'd show up, standing in the doorway, clipboard in hand, watching. If I went down to the basement to drop off laundry, she'd be there, organizing something on a shelf that clearly didn't need organizing. Once I was taking the back stairwell to avoid her, and when I got to the 4th floor, she was already there, leaning against the wall like she'd been waiting. The worst part was when I glanced out the window of the staff locker room one night while changing my shoes. She was standing outside in the courtyard, looking directly at the window, just standing there, staring. When I looked again 30 seconds later, she was gone. By the second week, I realized she'd started copying me. She changed her hairstyle to match mine, a low ponytail instead of the tight high one she'd worn before. She started carrying the same purple Hydro flask water bottle I always brought from home. One night I packed a chicken sandwich for dinner. When I opened it in the break room, she walked in with a chicken sandwich too. Same bread, same wrapper from the grocery store deli. I started changing my habits, trying to throw her off. I'd clean different floors, take my breaks at random times, avoid the places I knew she might show up. Nothing worked. She always found me. Then on the 10th night, my ID badge disappeared. I always kept it clipped inside my uniform pants pocket attached to a retractable cord. I'd checked it was there when I started my shift. But halfway through the night, when I reached for it to scan into the medication storage room, it was gone. I retraced every step. The break room, my cleaning cart, the laundry room, the bathroom. Nothing. I reported it to Linda, the charge nurse. She barely looked up from her computer. You probably dropped it somewhere. Go to security and get a temporary one. But I knew I hadn't dropped it. I was always careful with that badge. That night, around 3 in the morning, I was pushing my cart past the fourth-floor windows that overlooked the employee parking lot. Something made me stop and look down. My car, the blue Honda, had the passenger door hanging open. My heart jumped into my throat. I abandoned my cart and ran down the back stairwell, taking the steps 2 at a time. When I got to the parking lot, I was breathing hard, my hands shaking. The passenger door was wide open, the interior light on. The glove compartment hung open, papers scattered across the seat. I always kept that locked. I checked everything frantically. My registration, insurance card, a pack of gum, an old parking ticket. Then I remembered. The spare apartment key. I kept it hidden in a small magnetic box stuck to the inside back panel of the glove compartment, behind the manual. It was gone. I ran back inside, found Marcus at the security desk. Someone broke into my car, I said, my voice shaking. The hell? He stood up, finally awake. When? Just now. I saw it from the 4th floor. We went back out together. Marcus examined the door, looked inside, then said, let's check the cameras. We went back to his office and pulled up the footage. The parking lot camera is ancient, maybe 15 years old, grainy and choppy. All we could see was a dark figure approaching my car around 2:45. The person leaned inside for about 30 seconds, then walked away into the shadows. The resolution was too poor to see any details. Could have been anyone. You want to file a police report? Marcus asked. I nodded. The police didn't show up until almost 5 in the morning. I gave my statement, described what was missing, told them about the strange woman following me around. They wrote everything down, said they'd investigate, but I could tell they didn't think it was a priority. I didn't sleep that day. As soon as I got home around 7, I called a locksmith. $150 I didn't really have in my budget, but I couldn't risk someone having a key to my apartment. The next night, driving home after my shift around 6:30 in the morning, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street from my apartment building. Dark-tinted windows, engine off, nobody visible inside. I figured it was someone visiting a neighbor and didn't think much about it. But the second night it was there again. Same spot. Same car. By the third night it had moved closer, now parked just 2 spaces down from my building's entrance. The fourth night it wasn't there. I felt a small sense of relief. Maybe I'd been paranoid. But on the 5th night it was back, this time parked directly in front of my building. At work, the blonde woman's behavior changed. She stopped pretending. She'd stand in the middle of the hallway and just watch me mop. No clipboard, no pretending to work. Just standing there with her arms crossed, not blinking. One time I turned around and she was maybe 10 feet behind me. I hadn't heard her walk up. Can I help you with something? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She smiled. No, just watching, you're very thorough. Her voice had that same flat, emotionless quality. Then she turned and walked away. Later that night, around 2 in the morning, I went outside through the back loading dock to smoke a cigarette. I don't usually smoke, but the stress was getting to me. I was leaning against the railing when I saw movement in the parking lot. Someone was crouched next to my car, not breaking in, not rifling through it. Just squatting there, looking at it like they were inspecting it. Hey, I shouted. The figure stood up and ran, disappearing between the rows of cars. I didn't hear an engine start. I ran to my car, checked all the doors. Everything was locked. But sitting on the hood was my ID badge, the one that had disappeared over a week ago. That night, I didn't go back inside to finish my shift. I called Linda from my car and told her I was sick. She was annoyed but didn't argue. I drove home, checking my rearview mirror the entire way. When I got to my apartment, it was around 11 at night. I locked the door, put the chain on, checked it twice. I closed every curtain and blind. I sat on my couch with my phone in my hand, debating whether to call the police again. What would I even say? Someone returned my stolen ID badge. At 2:15 in the morning, exactly the time I usually took my break at the hospital, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Slow, deliberate steps that stopped right in front of my door. My entire body went cold. The doorknob started to turn, slowly testing the lock. The new deadbolt I'd installed held firm, but I could hear the pressure against it. Then I heard breathing. Soft, patient breathing on the other side of the door. I sat frozen on the couch, barely breathing myself. After about 20 seconds, the footsteps moved away, slow and unhurried. I waited 5 full minutes, counting each second in my head. Then I crawled to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. But when I opened the door slightly, keeping the chain on, I saw something on the doormat, a photograph. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was a picture of me at the hospital, mopping the floor on the third-floor hallway, taken from behind. I could see the date stamp in the corner. 3 days ago. I immediately called 911. The police arrived in 15 minutes. I showed them the photo, told them everything. The woman at the hospital, the black SUV, the stolen key and returned badge, someone trying my door. They took the photo as evidence, did a sweep of the building and the surrounding area. They found nothing. One officer stayed with me until sunrise, sitting in his patrol car outside. The next morning, I called the hospital HR department. I described the woman in detail. Blonde hair, navy scrubs, 30 years old, showed up early September. The HR representative put me on hold for several minutes. When she came back, her voice sounded confused. We don't have anyone matching that description. No new volunteers, no new nurses in that department. But I've seen her, I insisted. Every night for 2 weeks. Let me check our badge access logs. Another pause. There's no record of any new employee badges activated in September. Are you sure about this? I asked them to review the security footage. They did and called me back an hour later. We see someone matching your description on camera, but there's no badge scan record. No entry or exit logs. We don't know how she got in the building. It was like she was a ghost. The following week, she didn't show up. I asked Marcus if he'd seen the blonde woman. He looked at me confused. What blonde woman? I described her. He shook his head. Haven't seen anyone like that. I asked Deshawn. Same response. It was like she'd never existed. I installed a Ring doorbell camera at my apartment. It cost me another $120. I changed my car keys, got a whole new set made, and stopped keeping any spare keys anywhere except in a small safe in my bedroom. I started parking in different spots every day, never the same place twice. At work, I changed my routine completely. I rotated floors every hour, took breaks at random times, never followed a pattern. 2 months went by, no sign of her. The black SUV never came back. The police told me their investigation hadn't turned up anything useful. No fingerprints on the photo, no surveillance footage of anyone suspicious near my apartment. Gradually, I started to relax. Maybe she'd moved on. Maybe she'd found someone else to fixate on. Maybe I'd never know what she wanted. But sometimes, even now, when I'm mopping the third-floor hallway at 2 in the morning, I get that prickling feeling on the back of my neck. That sense that someone's watching. I turn around and there's nobody there. The hallway is empty, just the sound of machines beeping in patient rooms and the hum of the ventilation system. Maybe it's just paranoia. Maybe working nights for too long does something to your brain, makes you see things that aren't there. But I keep my ID badge in a zippered pocket inside my uniform now. I never go down to the basement alone anymore. And I always check my rearview mirror on the drive home. My mom was right about one thing. Night shift does turn you into a shadow. And sometimes shadows attract things you don't want to see. I still work at St. Mary's. Still the same shift, 10 at night to 6 in the morning. But I keep my head down, my routine's unpredictable, my door's locked. I don't know who she was or what she wanted from me. I just know I never want to see her again. And every time I hear footsteps behind me in an empty hallway, my heart still skips a beat. My old shift supervisor broke me down night after night. yelling at me for taking a 2-minute water break, for leaning against a wall when my legs cramped up after 8 hours standing. I worked the graveyard shift at a packaging plant, 12-hour nights, no sitting allowed, no stopping. When I asked about overtime pay for the extra hours he made us work off the clock, he fired me the next day. 3 months of unemployment followed. Rent piled up, groceries ran low, my car payment went into collections. I sent out 40 applications. Only one responded. Mercy Heights Medical Archive offered me a night security position at twice what I made at the plant. I couldn't say no. On my first day, I pulled up to a 6-story brick building on the west side of town, old but clean, with tall windows and a quiet parking lot. Inside, I was led down a hallway to a small security office. It had 4 monitors showing camera feeds, a swivel chair, a mini fridge, and a microwave. After 6 years of standing on concrete floors under fluorescent lights, this felt like a gift. I sat down in the chair and smiled. Maybe, just maybe, I'd landed somewhere good. Around 3 in the afternoon, I met Rachel, the day shift guard. She was in her 30s, had short brown hair, and wore a friendly smile. "You'll love the night shift here," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "Super quiet, nothing ever happens." That made me feel better. Then just before 5, Mr. Dalton showed up. He was tall and thin, maybe 50 years old, with graying hair and a neat suit. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but his eyes were sharp and cold. He walked me through the job. "You patrol every 2 hours. Check all doors on floors 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. Log everything in this book. Don't sleep. Don't leave your post." I nodded. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, "Floor 4 is locked. Don't go there, ever." I frowned. "Why not?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Old medical waste storage, hazardous materials, not safe." Something about the way he said it didn't sit right, but I didn't push. That first night, everything was calm. I did my rounds at 10, midnight, and 2. The building was silent except for the hum of the heating system. But when I walked past the stairwell door to floor 4, I paused. I thought I heard something, like breathing. I pressed my ear to the metal door. Nothing. I shook my head, probably just the vents. Over the next few nights, I started noticing things. Every night at exactly 2:15 in the morning, the elevator would move. I'd hear the cables shift, the doors open and close. I checked the monitors. No one got on. No one got off. But the log on the elevator panel read, "Elevator to floor 4, maintenance." I pulled up the maintenance schedule. There was nothing listed. On the 4th night, I stood outside the elevator and watched. At 2:14, I heard the cables engage. The numbers lit up. 1, 2, 3, 4. The doors opened on the 4th floor. I stared at the empty elevator shaft on my monitor. 30 seconds passed. Then the doors closed and it came back down. My hands were sweating. I called Dalton. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice groggy. "What is it, Marcus?" "The elevator keeps going to floor 4 every night at 2:15. There's no one in it," he sighed. "It's an old building. Elevators glitch. Don't worry about it. Just stay on your rounds." His voice sounded urgent, like he wanted me off the phone. I hung up, but I couldn't shake the feeling. On the 5th night, I heard footsteps, clear, heavy footsteps from above me. I was on the 3rd floor landing, about to go back down, when I heard them. Someone was walking on floor 4. I stood frozen, staring up at the locked door. My heart pounded in my chest. Someone was up there, but no one had a key except Dalton. The next morning, I found Rachel in the parking lot. She was getting into her car when I approached. "Hey, can I ask you something?" She turned, looking tired. "Sure." "What's really on floor 4? Her face changed. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "Look, I've worked here 3 years. Night guards before you, they didn't last. One guy quit after 2 weeks. Another just stopped showing up. No explanation. I don't know what's on floor 4, but Dalton's obsessed with keeping it locked." I felt a chill. "Is there another key, a backup?" She hesitated. "Maybe in the director's office, but that's always locked too." That night I made a decision. I packed a heavy-duty flashlight and a small lock-picking kit my older brother had taught me to use years ago when he worked as a locksmith. At 2 in the morning, I stood in front of the floor 4 door. It was solid metal with a card reader and a mechanical deadbolt. I swiped my security card. Red light. Access denied. I pulled out the kit. My hands shook as I worked the pins. 15 minutes passed. Sweat dripped down my neck. Finally, the bolt clicked. I turned the handle. The door opened a crack. A wave of stale, rotten air hit me. I covered my nose and shined the flashlight inside. The hallway was dark, the paint peeling off the walls. Old hospital beds lined one side, rusted and broken. This wasn't a storage area. It was an abandoned ward. I stepped inside and the door closed softly behind me. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness as I moved down the hallway. I passed several rooms. In one, I saw an examination table with dark brown stains dried into the metal. In another, medical files were scattered across the floor. I picked one up. The patient's name was redacted, but the diagnosis was still visible. Experimental treatment protocol 7B experimental. My stomach turned. I kept moving. At the end of the hall was a larger room, its door hanging halfway open. I pushed it wider and stepped inside. A large metal table sat in the center, surrounded by old surgical tools, scalpels, clamps, syringes. The walls had faded bloodstains smeared across them. I moved closer and aimed my light at the writing. Someone had written in blood, "They lied to US." I stumbled backward, my breath coming fast. Then I heard it, footsteps, heavy, slow, coming from the other end of the hallway. I clicked off my flashlight and ducked into a small side room, pressing myself against the wall. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might burst. The footsteps grew louder. They stopped right outside my door. A voice, low and rough, spoke. "I know you're here." It was Dalton. I held my breath. Dalton pushed the door open, his flashlight sweeping across the room. I pressed myself behind an old filing cabinet. He stepped inside. "You shouldn't have come here, Marcus," he said quietly. "I told you, floor 4 is off limits." I tried to stay still, but my hand brushed against a pen on the floor. It rolled and clattered against the wall. Dalton's light snapped toward the cabinet. "Come out." Slowly, I stepped into view, my hands shaking. Dalton looked at me and his expression wasn't angry. It was calm, terrifyingly calm. "You saw the files, you saw the room, now you know." I swallowed hard. "What is this place?" he sighed, lowering his flashlight slightly. "This used to be a private research ward. 20 years ago, they ran trials here, experimental drugs, unapproved procedures. Patients were promised cures. They got torture instead." Nausea rolled through me. "And you were part of it." Dalton shook his head slowly. "I was a patient." The words hit me like a punch. He continued, his voice flat. "They ruined me, ruined all of us. I survived, but barely, and I swore I'd keep this place sealed so nobody could do it again." My voice cracked. "Then why keep me out? Why not just tell me?" Dalton stared at me for a long moment. "Because the people who ran this place, they're still out there." Dalton led me into a smaller room off the main hallway. He opened an old metal box on a shelf and pulled out a stack of photographs. I looked through them. Patients, skeletal and restrained to beds with open wounds and terrified eyes. And doctors, men and women in white coats standing over them. I froze when I recognized one face. Helen Marks, the current director of Mercy Heights. She was younger in the photo, maybe in her 30s, wearing a white blouse and standing beside a patient strapped to a table. "She was the lead researcher," Dalton said. "She ran Protocol 7B when the facility got shut down by the state. She paid off inspectors, buried the records, and turned this place into a medical archive. She hired me because I keep my mouth shut. And she hires night guards who won't ask questions." My blood ran cold. "So I'm just another pawn," Dalton nodded. "Until tonight, now you know too much." I backed toward the door. "What are you going to do?" He didn't answer right away. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small USB drive. "Take this, it has copies of everything. Files, photos, patient records. Get out of here, don't come back, and expose them before they find you." I took the drive with trembling hands. "What about you?" He gave a sad smile. "I've lived with this for 20 years. It's time someone stopped them." He pushed me toward the door. "Go, now." I ran, down the hallway, through the stairwell, across the lobby, and out into the parking lot. The air was freezing, but I barely felt it. I jumped into my car, fumbling with the keys. As I pulled out, I looked back at the building. Dalton was standing in a fourth-floor window looking down at me. Then the light went out. I drove straight to the police station. My hands were still shaking when I handed the USB drive to a detective. I told him everything. At first, he looked skeptical, but when he opened the files on his computer, his expression changed. The evidence was undeniable. Within 2 weeks, a full investigation was launched. Helen Marks was arrested, along with 3 other doctors who had worked in the ward 20 years ago. Mercy Heights Medical Archive was shut down and sealed off. Police opened floor 4 under supervision and found even more records, more proof of what had happened. Survivors from the experiments were located and given settlements. I never went back to that building. I found a new job, something normal and safe, working security at a shopping mall. But every night when I close my eyes, I think about Dalton. The police never found him. He vanished after that night. Maybe he disappeared on purpose. Maybe he finally found some kind of peace. I don't know, but I do know this. The truth came out. After 20 years, the victims finally got justice. I sit in my small apartment now, looking out the window at the streetlights below, and for the first time in weeks, I feel lighter. I did the right thing. And this time, I wasn't broken.